Now then, welcome back to Statements That Aged Like Milk. In my most viewed video, that one about power creep in case you don't remember, I said that power creep is kinda necessary because the content is getting harder, which at the time still was true. Bosses evolved a lot since the beginning of the game. But nowadays, it doesn't feel like it anymore. Well, some event bosses are still quite hard, or many the bosses of specialized game modes or endgame game modes. I feel like they might have backpedaled a bit. So that got me thinking again. Is the game actually becoming easier? Or is this just the case because I am an Arknights veteran at this point, just like many other players? First of all, for this video, beware of spoilers in regards for most events that are still going to come out in global. These include Inu the Horaket, Delicious in Terror, Ending a Quen Overture, Portorio de Evoluti. Don't worry, there will be a warning about these events. While I will only be talking about the bosses, just going to be a heads up there. And with this, welcome to Is Arknights actually getting easier? So, but when did I first notice this? Funnily enough, it actually was during an event I haven't played myself yet, but during the discussion regarding the boss of From Ending a Quen Overture, or the Siege Altar event. In case you don't want to know anything, skip to the time mark on screen. Alistair, the Empire's Last Light, doesn't have a second phase like most other bosses. Only a power-up state after reaching 50% HP, which is not a problem since he can be defeated quite quickly. We are talking a few seconds after the stage starts. But when did I first notice it myself? And surprisingly enough, it was during the Here Are People's Souls event, or the Shu event. Slumbering of Sui wasn't difficult of a boss. It could easily be blocked by a singular defender medic. Even his most dangerous attack, as needlework, proved to be not much of a threat. Other enemies like Captain Matteo, Teresa, or even the most recent martyr Seaborn were quite easy. So I decided to look into why I thought they were so easy. Obviously, the first thing you would look at are their stats. I compared them to previous bosses and they had about the same amount of bulk, meaning a good amount of HP and or defense/resistance. Their attack stats were also about the same with a few exceptions here and there. So it definitely wasn't the stats that made a boss easier or harder, but something completely different. And yes, most of you most likely have already narrowed down the reason. The available operators and the mechanics of the boss itself. But what is more impactful? To make my life easier, I will be talking about the most impactful mechanics of any of these boss fights, so I don't have to go over everything and sound like a broken record at one point. Let's start with SOS. Which is the fact that it is pretty much loses all of its stats in the second phase. Like, look at this. These are its stats in phase 1. Phase 2, all gone. And the stats just get reduced further if this thing stands in clean water. So from its giant stat pool, only this tiny little much remains. So that was very easy to kill, and it won't be much of a threat overall. Next up, Captain Matteo. The mechanic I want to focus on is his straight shot and his lights out. His straight shot is a strong ability. While he has not the highest attack, in total it still is roughly 5,500 damage-ish. His light out makes it harder to clear normal mobs, unless you're running AoE or reveal. But their main mechanic, the straight shot, the most dangerous ability in their kit, is negated by a deployable or by reinforcing a wall. Next up on the list of bosses would be Teresa. Teresa is quite simple. She is just a DPS check. I mean, the most dangerous thing about her are the enemies on the map and her massively inflated bulk upon reaching second phase. Her unique tiles are quite troublesome, but this is where the DPS check comes in. Once you deal enough damage, the stage just ends itself, even if you haven't defeated all the enemies yet. And lastly, Martis the Seaborn, or Martis Seaborn. He is like not even fighting himself. Instead, he only buffs enemies on the map, and gives IS-3 effects to allies, and cannot buffs to linked targets, like loses HP when not at full health, or automatically activate skills, which for most Arknights personas shouldn't be that much of a problem. And even like the enemies surviving on 1 HP and then getting healed, also not a problem. As long as you can sustain that and not be overrun by enemies, it is an easy fight again. This even includes their EX or hard mode variants. But now, what about some old bosses that I and most likely many others consider hard, or at least are hard in our memories? My picks would be Tallulah, aka the Deathless Black Snake, Emperor's Blade Pursuer, and the Essence of Evolution. On paper, these bosses, once again, similar sets to the ones mentioned before, having respectable bulk and decent damage. And once again, it boils down to their abilities. Tallulah's Deathless Inferno, which was a trouble to survive or constantly having to bait her burning breath with fast redeploys. Since you still need some operators standing to defend against remaining enemies, or in case you try the hard version of the stage, you need to defend civilians. Emperor's Blade Pursuer. His infamous Dominion, which reduces allies' ASTD, gives them additional bulk, and being able to defeat any unit instantly that is inside of it. This means one misplaced Dominion and it could end your run. And finally, the by far hardest boss, at least according to Mary, Essence of Evolution. Like, where do we even start there? It can mass spawn mobs, then some of those can even reduce the ASPD when they are blocked. It has a directional shield that can reduce damage up to 99%, or the fact that it sends out a wave of 2 damage every 7 seconds once it reaches its last phase. And just from this, we can already see that they have a completely different design philosophy when it comes to abilities. Or at least the stage or event gimmick. These old bosses don't have a gimmick that makes it easier. It just is a pure battle of endurance or being able to exploit the base mechanics, like for example Emperor's Blade, deciding where Dominion is placed by dealing more damage with certain units. In case of Tallulah, trying to figure out a way to survive the fire bolts, for example with Nightingale skill 3. Or Essence of Evolution, trying to survive. Because, like, could you imagine fighting the bosses, the easier bosses, SOS without clean water, Mateo without the deployer builds? Most likely not. After all, this is what might make the fight easier. And the only boss out of the harder ones that actually has like a stage gimmick was Essence of Evolution, which had the Originium bombs. They would deal immediately 4k true damage. Does it now come down to the gimmicks at play? The answer is kinda. They definitely help with taking on some of the largest threats. It is undeniable that our operators also got stronger. I mean, power creep is an existing factor in any long-living game. As of the Opianus updates, and because of me making these videos, I revisited some of the bosses that I thought were hard, with, for example, the Abyssal Hunter squads with Wizardel or anything modern. And as it turns out, yeah, they are quite the pushovers now. Emperor's Blade, throw Pianus Anchor at him, and when he uses his ability to delete everything at a minion, just call back Pianus. Tallulah's Firebolts. How about letting Claudia and Spectre tank them with the help of their modules? or just using Logo's ability to slow down projectiles. Minimalist Drone, for example, let me introduce you to Typhon, being is able to take it out. As a solution, like, have you seen the damage Reed Alter can do to your device? And in case more damage is not enough, we do have the beauty of elemental damage nowadays, when currently no resistances apply. Or maybe you just need a bit of extra stability health. Yeah, Barry is the perfect medic, being able to heal a lot and heal elemental damage of every kind. Oh, in case the boss is not proccable, I may introduce you to Shu, who is just able to stall out enemies with her skill 3 even if they cannot be blocked. Or in case you just need that little bit more brute force, we can bring along our tactical distraction specialist Texas Alter and Yato Alter. And now let's discuss the upcoming bosses. Skip on the time on screen if you don't want to hear anything about it. Let's start with the boss of the dungeon Mexico, Cerberus. First of all the stages do not include a blue box, so you do not have to worry about leaks. And the way to defeat it is by cooking a certain meal 3 times in a row. This means, in case of the event, only defeat certain enemies before Cerberus reaches the pot, and even then, you are easily able to stall out Cerberus. I already said a few things about Alistair, but as of right now, he can be defeated before he becomes less a threat. And even if he's not defeated that fast, you can still make use of the equipment he spawns to power up your own operators you deploy next to him. Next up, Lapland boss. Once again, does not seem to be much of a struggle. Why she has the drone caster specialty of sending out drones. She has low attack herself, will also attack enemies, and it will only appear on fixed spots. In the end, it becomes a contest of who can defeat more enemies. If you are the winner, the next carnival time, so the unique event mechanic, will be more attack for your operators. And then this would just leave one boss, Anastasio, from the recent Fonz Altar event. While his abilities can be quite troublesome since they deal a lot of damage, especially splash damage, he will be very salty when faced with certain conditions. You just need to get past his first phase, and then you can just sink him in the sword. The biggest meme I saw was just block him with Shu. Like, he can't get past that and will just die in the sword. Now we can conclude this. While older bosses have become easier thanks to new operators. Hooray to power creep! New bosses seem to rely more on the unique event mechanics to beat. While you can just brute force your way through it, there's always this option to actually think. One of the more modern bosses that I personally think was a bit more harder, because how you would need to approach him, would be Cliff. While he gets debuffed from the vents, you can also just make use of his very short range to actually defeat him. And if you don't have that option, he actually becomes a challenging fight. In the end, these event gimmicks are quite nice, because not everyone has access to the Spurk operators, so having an alternative method to beat them is really good. And I would say this is my conclusion. Did bosses become easier? Yes. And all of that because of how broken operators nowadays are, and the fact that they used to play around with the event mechanics more, instead of just having stat sticks. And with this, I'm done with this video. It might be a long one already, so have a good one, and I will see you again soon. And obviously, don't forget to like and subscribe.